5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to Westchester Jewish Community Services. As a leading agency in providing a comprehensive spectrum of human services, we have been helping people since 1943. We serve all people in Westchester County, regardless of age, income, or ethnicity. We provide a wide variety of essential and dynamic services that make a difference in people's lives. Children, teens, adults, and senior citizens are served by our network of programs located throughout the county. When people come to us for assistance, they become part of the WJCS family. Our highly trained and skilled staff focus on you and your family and are committed to becoming your partner in finding solutions. For more than half a century, we have been connecting people to services that help them overcome mental, physical, or emotional challenges. WJCS is here in your community when you need us.
Welcome to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by government grants, private individuals and foundations, UJA Federation, United Way, and corporations. May is Older Americans Month. One fact that is inevitable for most of us is that we are likely to get older. And according to current predictions, we are likely to live longer, with many of us quite healthy and productive into our 80s and 90s. This development is definitely a blessing, but one that brings with it many challenges for families, governmental services, and organizations in both the private and not-for-profit sector. Through a series of White House conferences on aging between 1961 and 1995, a national agenda was developed to address the changing needs of an expanding population of older adults. As a result of the 4 conferences, historic changes were made in the legislation affecting Social Security, housing, Medicaid and Medicare, long-term care, and family caregiving support. Since the last national conference in 1995, the demographics of seniors have continued to evolve, and today we face new issues, a different political and economic climate, and increased stresses on institutions and municipalities. Tonight we want to explore the current status and emerging prospects for Westchester's senior adults. And we're going to do it with the expert in our county, who is the Commissioner of Westchester Department of Senior Programs and Services, May Carpenter. Welcome, May.
Thank you.
We're delighted to have you with us. And we'll also be talking about the senior services at WJCS with our own Director of Geriatric Services, Judy Fink. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you.
And thank you both for joining us. In the second half of the show, we will be looking at specific WJCS programs serving personal mental health and home care needs. So let's get started. May, give us a little bit of a general overview of what seniors look like in Westchester today.
Well, let me just say they look wonderful.
They do.
They're active, they're healthy, they're involved in the community, very positive outlook on life, and however, many of them do have some physical challenges. About 45% of our senior population indicated they have some type of self-care or mobility limitations. But with that in mind, they take advantage of every opportunity to continue to function and enjoy life.
Do we have an idea of how many seniors there are, and how are we defining seniors? As I get older, I like it to be defined higher and higher.
Well, they're defining seniors as individuals over the age of 60. And about 20% of our county's population is over the age of 60, and we're about 50 years ahead of the rest of the country in terms of the proportion of our population that's regarded as seniors, and when the rest of the country will reach that number. We have about 170,000 persons in Westchester County over the age of 60.
So years ago, they predicted that most of the seniors would end up in Florida, and that's not happening. Huh? They're
Well, we
coming
do have
back.
a very large out-migration to Florida, but they do come back. They do come back as they need services and they need to be around family. And some of the reasons why they may have moved to Florida, they can no longer be active in sports, and a lot of their cohorts have passed on, and they come back to be around familiar surroundings and with family.
What are you finding in terms of the geographic distribution? Are our seniors located in southern Westchester or all over the county?
It's approximately half. Half in the southern part of the county and then half in the northern part of the county. But there are differences. We have densely populated municipalities in the southern part of the county, such as Mount Vernon, the 7th most densest community in the country, Yonkers, and south of 287. But you have many seniors who have aged in place in the northern part of the county, and they are challenged with transportation needs for themselves, as well as transportation needs for service providers and for workers to get into their homes and provide assistance.
Yeah, they're much further apart and not a great public transportation system.
Right,
up in that
absolutely.
area.
And when a woman becomes a widow in the northern part of the county and can no longer drive at night or didn't do much of the driving when her husband was alive, she becomes isolated. And with that isolation becomes depression and loneliness, and just a host of problems can set in.
Right. You mentioned that gender issue. Do you have some sense of how our older adults look in terms of the gender?
Oh yes, of course we all know that there are more older women than there are men. They outnumber them tremendously, and I think the men are beginning to catch up though, in terms of not having this very wide gap. But definitely we have more older single women in Westchester County in the senior population than we have men. And then of course the men may have remarried, so they would not be single. So you would have the older single woman living alone here in Westchester County.
Right. So give me a sense of what the major concerns are of our senior adults today.
Well, they do vary according to geographical areas. You mentioned that the institutions and that seniors themselves might be stressed, but their caregivers are also stressed. Their family members are also stressed in providing care. About 10 years ago, caregivers provided 90% of the care. And because we're living in a two-income economy, now caregivers are drawing more and more upon the formal services, but they're still having to provide part-time caregiving. We hear of stories where women who live in the northern part of the county, as far as Yorktown, are having to commute down to an older relative's home in Yonkers to cook dinner after work and then go home and take care of her own kids, and it's back and forth and back and forth. So caregivers are also under a lot of stress here in the county.
Well, Judy certainly knows that with the Project Time Out program and the caregiver.
Providing respite to caregivers in their home.
Right. I think that of course our most pressing need would be appropriate housing. I'm not going to say just affordable. I'm going to say appropriate housing, and that takes into consideration affordability. Many older people are living in inappropriate housing, primarily because it's the cheapest place to stay in their own homes. And then of course there's an emotional attachment, but it might be oversized, it might not be safe, it might not be barrier-free, but it is in the community where they have ties. They don't want to be dislocated to out-of-the-way reservations, if I may use that term. They want to be in the communities where they have support systems, formal and informal support systems, where they had a life, where they still have a life. When we had our Hall of Fame induction several years ago, we inducted a woman in the Hall of Fame, and we always invite their family members to come and observe the ceremony. And she introduced her family members. She introduced her mailman, her Con Ed man, the man who picks up the trash, her beautician, her cleaners. This was her
Sure,
family.
well, very often those are the people
That's
who
right.
know the most
That's
about
right.
a person who's
Absolutely.
living by herself.
That's
and-
right.
Certainly the mailman. You know.
That's right. And then her son, who was here from Texas.
Right.
Her only
right.
child here from Texas. So naturally, she's very dependent upon her informal support system, her neighborhood, her community. And they don't want to be dislocated to places where they can't walk to the beauty shop, can't walk to the drugstore. And I think that that's our #1 concern here in the county, appropriate housing within the community where you raised your family, where you have friends, your place of worship. I mean, whatever is important to you, your beautician, whatever is important to you.
And where you feel you have roots.
That's right. So I think that housing is #1. And then also transportation. Depends upon where you live. And then, of course, with some seniors, even if they live near public transportation, due to physical limitations, they may not be able to use the buses or to get to the buses. Of course, our buses are barrier-free. They can be lowered to the curb level.
Right.
We certainly saw that recently. So transportation, being able to get to medical visits, and it's not just to take care of the activities of life. They like to get out for a little bit of fun, for some recreation, for some cultural and educational and intellectual stimulation.
Right.
So transportation is a big problem. I wish that everybody could take one with them whenever they go someplace.
Well, that's
to
an
the
interesting thought.
right, to the movies, wherever. Would you like to go if you know
Project Time
someone?
Out's
Yes.
escort
I guess
program
that's what-
helps out a little bit in that area.
Right.
Yes.
Escorting.
Yes, we subcontract that program with you,
Absolutely.
and it was supposed to be a demonstration project, and it has grown probably 1,000% over what we
Absolutely.
had estimated we
Yeah.
could afford.
Right.
But it is so
Tripled.
important because if we don't spend money proactively, and I call that proactivity, if we don't spend monies there, then we're going to spend monies for costly medical visits and for depression and for all other types of illnesses that could have been avoided had we addressed just the normal needs of a person who wants to stay healthy and stay involved.
Right. So before we go into talking about the pre-White House conference, just tell me a little bit about what your department does to help those people who prefer to stay in their communities and want to remain active in the community, and how you provide service throughout this county to so many people.
Well, let me start with the first White House Conference on Aging in 1961. Out of that White House Conference on Aging, it was indicated there needs to be, at the federal level and at the state levels, someone to coordinate services for the older people, and someone to stay on top of the needs and look at the gaps and the fragmentations and what's missing in terms of services. And also starting with the mission and with the goal that every older person is entitled to remain independent and with dignity within their own communities and within their own homes for as long as possible, as long as it is safe. So we start there in 1961. And then in 1965, we started the state units on aging after we started the administration on aging. In 1973, we started the area agencies on aging throughout the country. There's an area agency on aging in 657 counties in this country. And we report to our state units on aging and to the administration on aging. And that position has been elevated to an undersecretary in the Health of Human Services. But we're responsible for assessing what the needs are within our geographical area, knowing what's available, matching up what's needed with what's available, and most importantly, what's missing, and then also staying on top of what those barriers are to access those services, whether the barrier might be a regulation, which we often find here in Westchester County, that some of those federal eligibility guidelines leave a lot of our seniors ineligible for a service. I mean, even with EPIC at the state level, we advocated to increase the eligibility guidelines so that more seniors could take advantage of this pharmaceutical program. So we want to know what the barriers are, whether they be regulatory, legislative, guidelines that prevent seniors within our geographical area from being able to access those services. Then we go to developing gap-filling services. Services that we know are no longer, that just don't exist. That's how we got into the escort service with the timeout program, to be able to escort seniors to places where they couldn't go by themselves, so they're not just isolated and locked in their homes. And so that gap-filling service. So we fund gap-filling services with funds from the Older Americans Act, from the state unit, the state Office for Aging, with county funding, with local municipal funding, with not-for-profit funding, and with contributions from seniors themselves. When we got started back in 1974, the federal government put in 90% of the monies. Now they're down to about 35%.
Right, they want the states and local
That's
government
right.
to participate.
They have not kept up with the aging of the population. As a matter of fact, when you factor in our demographic growth, and let me say that the over 85 population has experienced a 24% growth in the past 20 years. And then, of course, they might be in need of more services than the 60-year-old. But when you factor in inflation and the growth of the population, we are at 65% of our 1980 buying power in terms of federal appropriations. So of course, as advocates, and that's also part of our mission to advocate for the elderly, we were able to get the state to step in with state funding. And through our department, funding has increased, has increased by over 100% in the past 7 years, since we became a department.
Right. So you are all over providing all of these different kinds of services and finding funding streams to help support them.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, we're forever writing grants.
Well, that's great. Now, in preparation for the White House conference that's anticipated this October, I believe.
Yes.
You have been very busy with a number of caucuses and trying to, again, assess where we are in Westchester and what's going on. Tell us a little bit about this process and what you're finding through the White House pre-conferences.
Well, first let me say that we did a complete needs assessment survey in Westchester County and 28 of the municipalities, the towns and villages and cities. And with that needs assessment survey, we called it the Millennium Aging Project. We spoke to over 3,000 seniors, and we determined what the needs are by categories. And based upon these categories, we developed caucuses for our pre-White House Conference on Aging mini-series. And this has just been an absolutely fantastic community-wide planning project, with all sectors of the community being involved: faith-based organizations, educational institutions, the private sector, the service providers, seniors. They've all been involved in determining what the priority issues should be that should be addressed at this White House Conference on Aging. And then from there, they've been holding conferences, many conferences, to offer to the community for review and for adoption their resolutions of what should be done to meet the needs that were identified in that particular caucus. So it's a major community planning project. We like to say that we may not be able to change the winds, but we certainly can adjust the sails. And that's what we're trying to do. We feel that this country has put a tremendous amount of money, time, and energy for disaster planning since 9/11, and we should, because we were not prepared. But we should do no less for preparing for the aging of our population, particularly with the baby boomers. And the average baby boomer only has a 401k worth $21,000. So
You're going to have a lot of planning to do.
A lot of planning to do.
Right. I know, Judy, you've participated in a couple of the caucuses and taken back from this process some issues for WJCS. Can you talk a little bit about what we've done to piggyback on this caucus idea?
Well, many of our staff have participated in many of the caucuses, and they're planning of the priorities. I had sat on the caregiving, the transportation, and the elder abuse coalitions, and the caucuses for the pre-White House conference that's coming up. And we helped, work on developing the priorities. I think many of the caucuses overlap. There's a housing caucus, there's financial, there's health, there's mental health, health and wellness, many caucuses. And I think that we identified that many of the needs overlap, such as caregiving is a major issue that overlaps with disabilities and with diversity issues, and many people just need help caregiving. We have children taking care of parents, we have spouses taking care of each other, and we have siblings taking care of each other, and they have their own families, they have their own jobs, and it can be very rewarding, but it can also be very stressful being a caregiver. We talked about the transportation problems. There's a lot of transportation needs in the county. One was, we talked about that northern part of the county has very limited bus services. We have paratransit in the county, which is great, but there's a lot of older people who can't get from their door onto the bus. I mean, the escort program can help a little bit in that area, and some towns actually have their own transportation vans and their own escorts. But sometimes seniors need help getting onto those buses. They can't do it by themselves. Certainly affordable health care has been an issue, and affordable housing, like you mentioned. A lot of seniors could use assisted living, but it's not affordable to many people, and it's a great concept. So we have taken back many of these ideas and priorities and talked about it at the agency at our own geriatric think tank. The caucuses also gave us a chance to interact with other agencies, and for other agencies to get to know WJCS and the services we provide. So it's been a very beneficial back and forth process for everyone.
Right, okay. Well, we'll talk a little later about the specific WJCS services, but where do you expect to go? You're going to make resolutions, set priorities. How effective will this be? You're bringing it to the state, or where is this going from the process in Westchester?
Well, we have already sent out to all the 657 area agencies in the country our priority issues as developed by the caucuses. I've been told that we have more information on the pre-White House Conference on Aging, on the White House Conference on Aging, on the websites than anybody else in the country. We did speak at several national conferences on our efforts. We feel that it's important for advocates for older persons to really take the time, and as you mentioned, you've gotten to know other service providers. This fosters and enhances coordination, and that eliminates duplication and competition. And there's more collaboration as you're able to sit around the table and talk about needs and your experiences. And we're going to continue these caucuses beyond the White House Conference on Aging. The next stage for us will be to develop a regional agenda for aging here in the county. Because as we said before, the needs differ and vary from one part of the county to the other. And we have put in place, as a result of our Millennium Aging Project, VOCAL, Voices of Community Action and Leadership. Right now we've been undergoing with PACE and other educational institutions skills training on advocacy and understanding how your government works. But with that skill, with those skills and with that knowledge, we plan to provide vocalists with a blueprint for each region in the county so that they can be out there advocating and educating policymakers. So many of our policymakers are volunteers in our communities and our municipalities, and they don't have the time to study the issues. I mean, people who sit on planning boards and zoning boards, city council people, these are in many cases volunteers. They don't have the time to come up on the learning curve on all things that we have learned for the past 40 years working with the elderly. But our vocalists will be able to be their unpaid, unofficial research staff assistants, legislative assistants, and have a meeting with them when something is going to come before their bodies and give them informed opinions on how they should respond to what's really needed based upon almost a scientific process, not just the secondary research with the census data, but with asking people. The Millennium Aging Project and then Fordham University came in and conducted focus groups in every region of the county. So we have a lot of primary first-hand data that we want to share with policymakers who don't have time to do this work.
So you're really empowering both the elderly and advocates for the elderly to do some legislative action and to push the agenda once these priorities are set.
Yes, you mentioned assisted living. It cannot be for just those who can, who can afford to pay for private assisted living. Right. People are aging in place in senior citizens housing without services. Right. They're aging in place in they're actually NORCs, whether they meet the criteria to be called a NORC by funding guidelines. They actually are naturally occurring retirement communities. And people move in and downsize and move in when they're 55 years old, and they're there at 85 years old, and there are no services.
Right.
And so we've got to work on getting services into the buildings where people are. It's easier to carry services into the buildings and to retrofit what's already there than to go out and build new bricks and mortar from scratch. Not in this county, not with the cost of construction and the cost of land.
That's for sure. Well, we only have 2.5 minutes left. I know we had talked about some other projects, but I don't think we're going to get to those. So just if you would just summarize for those viewers who might be interested in getting involved in the pre-White House conferences and what they can do and how they can go about becoming active
well, first
in the
of all,
next couple of months.
All right. Please visit our website at westchestergov.com and you'll see all of the pre-White House conferences that are listed for the rest of the year. We have several that are planned in June, and we are bringing in top national speakers at these conferences. So please check our website, or you may call 813-6300, and we'll be glad to give you information about where the conferences are being held. We've already held 2 of them, but we have, I think, 16 more to go.
Oh, boy, you have a busy summer coming up.
Right, and then we have our culminating event, September the 23rd, and that's when we're going to present the results of all the caucuses. But the public will get a chance to rank and rate all of our resolutions on the internet this summer. And if they don't use the internet, organizations can do the ratings as part of a meeting and then send the results in. So we want feedback from the public as to whether or not we were on target in terms of these priority issues and in terms of these resolutions.
Okay, well, May, I thank you so much for your time and your insights, and I think you've given us an awful lot to think about. Judy will come back to you in the second half. And because you've opened up the possibilities for us, we are having our annual meeting on June 1st, and I'd like to invite all of our viewers to attend the annual meeting, which will focus on senior services, both on the county with Diane Booker from the Commissioner's Office and with experts from our agency and some people who have received services from our agency. And maybe if we have it ready at that point, we can help people make some ratings of the resolutions.
Absolutely,
so we will take advantage of that. Thank you again for your time. And stay tuned. In the second half, we'll be talking about WJCS services to seniors. Welcome back to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by government grants, private individuals and foundations, UJA Federation, United Way, and corporations. Current trends and projections anticipate that by the year 2020, senior adults will represent 22% of the population of Westchester County. Recognizing that nearly 1/4 of its people will need services geared to an aging lifestyle, local government and voluntary agencies are looking at the resources they may need to provide to make appropriate assistance available to older individuals. In the first half of this program, May Carpenter, Commissioner of Senior Programs and Services for Westchester, gave us insight into the process in which the county is engaged to determine priorities for serving seniors now and in the future. In this half, we will explore further the scope of programs offered by WJCS for older adults and their families. May is Older Americans Month and Mental Health Month. It is especially fitting, therefore, that we celebrate the extensive array of services that WJCS has available to seniors that help them function as optimally as possible and enable them to cope with the potential stresses and mental and physical challenges that sometimes accompany advancing age. So I'd like to introduce our participants in this half. Judy Fink, welcome back, Judy,
Thank you.
Director of our Geriatric Services. And Sheila Rabideau, who is a frequent visitor on this show, the Director of our Home Health Services and Assistant Executive Director. Thank you for joining us. And Alan Warner, who is Director of Continuing Day Treatment Programs. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you.
So this program, we're going to be previewing some of the things we'll be talking about at our annual meeting on June 1st. And Judy, at that time, we're going to be having Diane Booker talking about some of the senior services in the county, but maybe at this time you could help us understand, have an overview of the services that WJCS provides for seniors through our agency.
Well, WJCS provides an array of many different programs and services for seniors. And we're always looking to come up with new ideas, and we're using the priorities that we're learning about through the caucuses to develop new programming. But we have many programs available. We work closely with the Westchester County Department of Senior Programs and Services, who does fund some of our programs. We have also developed our own geriatric guide to programs and services that we provide in the agency, and it's available to anyone upon request. But we'll start with, we have a geriatric care management program where we have social workers who meet with clients and families, whether in their homes or in our offices, to assess the many needs that they may have. We will develop a whole plan of needs, of what they can use and what services we can provide for them, such as we have a mental health, we have 9 mental health clinics in the county that provide individual counseling, couple therapy, marital therapy, family therapy, and we can provide counseling again in the homes or mostly in the offices. But if we have homebound clients, we can sometimes reach out to them also. We have a geriatric outreach program where counseling is available and where a case manager can assess the needs of a client and family in their homes. Mm-hmm. We have Project Time Out, where I'm the coordinator of that program that's been in existence for about 23 years now, helping caregivers have some respite, get a break from their full-time caregiving responsibilities. We know that caregiving can be very rewarding, but it also can be very stressful. As I mentioned before in the first half, many caregivers, whether they're spouses or their children or their siblings, sisters and brothers taking care of each other, they also have their own lives, their own families. Some are working and trying to juggle the many tasks that they have before them, and can use some respite to get a break from caregiving. We provide companions on a sliding scale fee who go in, keep a senior company while the family member gets a chance to go out. They can do anything they want, go out shopping, go to their own medical appointments, take care of their own health, run their errands. Sometimes I've had caregivers go back to sleep because they've been up all night taking care of someone.
Right, I think people don't understand how valuable that service is.
Right.
It seems like a luxury, but it's really not.
It's a
because
necessity
people really
often.
need to have a break, need to take a little time and then rejuvenate.
Right. So we have our companion program. We also have an escort program that I spoke about before, where we can escort seniors to medical appointments, shopping, errands. We have escorts that go out to lunch with our companion or to the movies. There's no fee for the escort's time, but the family and client have to arrange for the transportation. And that program has tripled since its inception about 3 years ago.
May was saying. It really
It's
seems
great
like they hadn't really anticipated how important it was to have someone available to
Right.
take people where they need to go.
Right, and it's helped homebound seniors get out of the house where they didn't have that opportunity before. So it's a great service. And then we have, if you need more help than a companion, we have our home care department.
Right. So let's let Sheila talk a little bit about the home health services and the range of options available to people who can no longer be independent without help in their homes.
When someone starts needing hands-on care, assistance with personal care, cooking, just getting out and performing those activities of daily living, that's when they've progressed from Project Time Out, which is less of a hands-on care, to home health services. Unfortunately, home care is not inexpensive, and frequently seniors find it difficult. Through the Department of Senior Programs and Services, through the ISEP program, home care is available. It's also available on a private pay basis. And what we're seeing more and more now are individuals have long-term care insurance. That many policies today are paying for home care services in the home. And then, of course, through Medicaid and Medicare. People are under the misconception that Medicare will take care of them once they're home, and if they need assistance. And unfortunately, that's not true anymore. Since 1995, maintenance-type home care is not covered, and Medicare will not pay for anything for maintenance.
So basically what Medicare does pay for is if people have been hospitalized and then they are released, then they have a certain amount of time that it's covered?
Diagnosis driven, depending, it's a rehab. You know, you think about while you're recuperating, while you're rehabbing. And if you need a specialty, if you need a nurse coming in, if you need a physical therapist, then you're also eligible for possibly some home care hours. Without the specialty services, Medicare will not pay for anything.
So now with the advent of long-term care and also some people who have private insurance, tell me about the kinds of services that people can access and what's available to them if they contact our home care.
Oh, well, as I mentioned before, bathing, someone coming in, and we recently had a request from a woman who said she just couldn't get herself up and get going in the morning. So she really wanted somebody to come in, help her get up, help her bathe, help her dress. This is a very socially active person who just couldn't physically do it. So the aide goes in and helps her, gets a meal ready, helps with laundry, does some grocery shopping, does some light housekeeping in the home. So it's really just kind of help get her together, and so she can meet the day.
Now, as Judy mentioned, the geriatric care management does assessments. You go into a home too and assess what the needs are. If someone needs beyond that kind of personal care, what else can be accessed?
One of the things that we send out one of our registered nurses out to go out, do an assessment, and find out, does the level of care that we provide meet that person's needs? And if it meets their needs, may use the term appropriate housing. This is appropriate housing in their own home. Can this person be maintained safely in their home with the care that we provide? Hopefully it's yes. Sometimes it's no. And when it's no, we make the referrals for that person to get either the services that they need or a setting that they need that best can meet their needs safely.
And are there also times when we help access other services? Physical therapy, occupational therapy, things of that
Constantly. Based on what? Now, bear in mind that physicians have to order the home care services. So there's a lot of interplay between our professional staff and the physicians and the family and discharging entities, whether it's nursing home, hospitals, as to what the plan of care is. If the plan of care includes physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, we make arrangements for that to happen.
Okay. Just one more question on this. Now, with more adults who are moving into senior residences and assisted living, are there opportunities for us to provide services to people who are in those kinds of settings?
Yes, for what a lot of the, in some cases, independent living, the senior living, someone may have an episodic medical issue where it's expected to be short-term. They always have the option of hiring or getting a consultant in and then obtaining the services that they need.
Okay, so we can still be called upon. People don't realize that in those types of settings, not everything is necessarily available on site.
It's basically in their residence, wherever their choice of residence is. We even have some situations where clients are in hospitals or nursing homes on a short-term stay, and families are more comfortable with having an additional pair of eyes and pair of hands. We all know what staffing's like these days.
Right.
And this gives the family a little bit of ease of mind while that person's in the hospital.
One more service that I know you provide through your division is the voice care pendant, and maybe you could just let people know what we do in terms of that.
Voice care is a personal emergency response system where at the touch of a button, it's 24 monitoring, 24 hours. At a touch of a button, there's a monitoring box in the person's home, and there's two-way communication with the monitoring center. In the event of an emergency or a problem, that monitoring center notifies predetermined individuals, and predetermined could be the super in the building, or 911, or if it's a medical emergency, immediately 911, to respond to that person's needs. The monitoring system is really just gives peace of mind until something happens. I've heard many times say, oh, I didn't think I needed it until I fell out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't get up.
Right. And the last thing you want to think is that someone is alone and not being helped.
Right.
So they can access that by giving us a call, and we'll give those numbers later.
Okay.
Okay. Alan, as people go through life, the path isn't always necessarily smooth.
That's for sure.
And when people experience depression and mental illness, your continuing day treatments are there for them. Can you let us know what the range of services are and exactly what a continuing day treatment program is?
Sure. A continuing day treatment program is really a group program where people 55 years and older often these are folks with some long-term mental health issues can come. There's a lot of socialization. We run all kinds of groups. We run health groups, mental health groups. We also have psychiatrists who are there who can provide medication monitoring and prescribe medication. It's really a place where folks can come and really, it's really to enhance their living skills. Some folks have a lot of problems with social interaction and people are lonely. So it's really a place where people can, be with other folks and hopefully feel better.
Do they have to have a prescription from a doctor that they need this kind of treatment, or is it something that someone who's watching, who's depressed and under care, can say, I would like to attend a center like this?
People could certainly call, but most of the people that we have are sent to us through either from their doctor, from other agencies. We've gotten referrals from visiting nurse services, from other agencies that also have seniors within their programs, from people being released from rehabs, things like that. Lots of different ways.
And people can attend 1 day, 5 days? How does it work?
Well, it has to be more than one, but definitely 2 to 5. We generally like it when people come at least 3 days, and then we're pretty flexible, so we can always adjust up or down. But we've actually had people who started with 2 and said, you know what, I feel better if I come 3 days a week, because really, I think being with other people, interacting, it's really one of the ways that people can feel better.
Give us an idea of what a typical morning is like at the day treatment program.
Most people arrive between 9 and 10. People come either by vans. Some folks in our NeuroShell program have a few people who live close enough they actually walk, and some people come from paratransit. And then at 10 o'clock we run a community meeting, usually for about a half hour, maybe a little bit longer. And then from 10:30, then there's a little break, and then we might do an exercise group for 15-20 minutes, and then another group for 45 minutes, and then perhaps another group for 30 minutes, and then we have lunch. We serve a very nutritious lunch every day. And again, it depends which program. They run a little differently. One of the programs actually has a group after lunch because they have lunch earlier. So the programming part of the day ends by 1:30. And people start going home between 1:30 and 2.
Right. Now, these are operated in New Rochelle and White Plains.
Yes.
Do people have to live in those areas or just be able to access, get access?
Whichever one is closest to them probably works best. Although I actually have somebody who comes from Mount Vernon up to White Plains. It's just it worked out just better for her because the White Plains program has easier access in terms of a wheelchair.
How do people pay for those services?
Well, we get paid in different ways. Some folks who have Medicaid, Medicaid pays for this. People who have Medicare, Medicare pays for some parts of it, the doctor's visits, some individual sessions. That's another part I didn't mention, is that everybody has an individual therapist, and and that's also part of the treatment. So it doesn't happen all in groups. People do get individual attention. And other folks, we set up a fee based on income. So there is a sliding scale.
Now, in your White Plains, and I guess in New Rochelle as well, there's also another population of people who attend these day programs, and those are people with mental retardation and developmental disabilities. Talk a little bit about the interaction between the older people and the people with developmental disabilities.
Again, I think what happened perhaps a few years ago was that I think there was, people realized that there was sort of a need. A lot of folks who had both mental retardation and mental illness, it was hard to find places for them. And in looking at the programming and the groups and so on, it was kind of felt that a lot of the groups were really the same. The same type of group would help both populations. And what has happened over the years is that we've developed a track within each program for these folks, and it's a little bit more vocationally geared. Hopefully, some people will actually find work or find or go into volunteering. But what's interesting is a lot of the older folks kind of have taken some of the younger people under their wing a little bit, and it's really been nice to see. And the energy is it really works. It just really works.
Just one last thing in terms of the goals for the older people who attend your program. Where do you see them going after they've been in the program for a while?
Well, for some of the folks, they're going to stay with us for quite a while. The idea is really to enhance their living in the community. In some cases, it's really perhaps to sort of get more involved in some community activities like the senior centers within some of the towns and spend less time with us. And also to develop just a better self-monitoring so that they can better cope with their own physical and mental challenges. Really, there's again a lot of folks in our program have physical issues, not just mental health issues, and that's a big challenge. So that people know when I need to go to the doctor, which symptoms do I really need to focus on.
Right. So you really help people get through their days and also be able to have better interaction with others and in their communities.
Right.
Well, that's great. Judy, let's pick up. There are other WJCS services that help seniors to live better in their homes and to adjust. I know we recently did this Friendly Faces program that enables people to come and be visited.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about some of these?
Well, the Friendly Faces program is a new program, and there are volunteers who come to visit a homebound senior maybe once a week. And this program's new and just getting off the ground, but we do have some volunteers and we do have some clients, and it's starting to work. I mean, it's just a nice socialization program for someone who's homebound to have someone just come in, maybe have a cup of tea and talk and socialize for an hour or so. As I mentioned in the first half, we have 9 mental health clinics throughout the county offering all kinds of individual, marital, and family therapy for anyone who needs that. We have an end-of-life program, bereavement program called Pathways to Care, providing counseling for clients with serious illnesses and bereavement issues. We have a Partners in Caring program where we have social workers on site at synagogues and assisted living facilities to help with any counseling needs of the clients there. The Westchester Self-Help Clearinghouse has lists and also helps people start self-help groups on many issues. We have programs for the developmentally disabled. We have counseling, we have service coordination. So there's a whole variety. We also have spiritual counseling. We have a new program offering spiritual counseling. So we have a lot of programs to meet almost all the needs.
And I know that there's a lot of interaction between your various programs. I know Home Health Services refers to Project Time Out, and Connections, which is people who are homebound and elderly can talk to each other on the telephone. And I'm sure that there are referrals to your program, so everything
Absolutely.
sort of works together.
The drop-in center at Hartsdale for seniors is a socialization program.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we get referrals also from some of the clinics when there's a senior who looks like they may need a more intensive type of program. So that's been good.
Right. So I guess that if someone has some senior needs, they can contact WJCS, and it should be seamless from where a family member may need to be able to find out what options are available, information, referral, resources,
Right.
geriatric care management, to the home health services, to mental health and socialization needs. So I thank you all for your input and for what you're doing, and we'll look forward to hearing more about it at the annual meeting. Let me just sum up here. Is there anything else you want to say before we finish?
Just to remind everyone about our new guide that we have for geriatric services and programs at WJCS, and if anyone needs a copy, they should call the agency.
Okay, why don't you give your phone number so that people could call
Okay,
you
if
they
anyone
want
has
the
any
guide or
questions,
questions.
You can call me. I'm Judy Fink, 914-761-0600, extension 340.
Okay, and Sheila for home health services.
For home health, for information, it would be 761-0600, and that would be extension 339.
Okay, and they can access the voice care
Same way.
system that way
Same
as
way.
well. Right, and Alan, for your program?
In New Rochelle, that would be 636-0547, and in White Plains, that would be 946-6220.
Okay, well, thank you all for your input, and again, I welcome all of our viewers to attend our annual meeting, which will be on June 1st. We'll be talking about services to seniors in the county and services to seniors available through WJCS. As you've heard tonight, we have a wide array of services, and we hope that when you or a loved one are in need of assistance, that you'll give us a call. Thank you for viewing, and good night.